It's too distracting for me. Um, anyway, I was in educational publishing, went into magazines, and for many years wrote for New York Magazine, all the women's magazines throughout the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And in 2000, of course, like everybody else, I had to start migrating online. And I eventually found my way to Medium. During those years, I also wrote 16 adult titles, many of them co authors. And in fact, one of my co authors, I think, joined early, Ron Taffel. We wrote several books together. And so when I was thinking about this talk, well, what have 50 years plus taught me? And I did what I usually do in the creative process. I often call it breaking the code. If I have a project, whether it's giving a talk on Medium or writing a full length book, I walk around all day and then many weeks sometimes, and often I will say, uh, what's the answer to this question? And I hope that the universe supplies it. And sometimes it has happened in very dramatic ways. I once dreamed almost the outline of almost the full outline of the book I wrote about co-parenting. I woke up and I was able to write down 8 of the 10 keys that were eventually in the book. So I did that with this Medium talk, and 3 words came out: ear, voice, and connection. And at first I was a little bit surprised because I thought, well, those are strange words. They're not even the same kind of words. But in a nutshell, ear is knowing. It's not just ear. Probably a better word would be antenna. It's knowing what a good story is. Voice is telling that story, picking the details, deciding what order that you should tell them in that story. And that could be a sentence, or it could be a book. Now, ear and voice are really elements of writing. That's part, I think, whether they're conscious of it or not. And every writer writes differently. I write the way I write, just like I cook the way I cook. Writing, like everything else, is a totally individual pursuit. And when I hear, for example, that a writer says, I just sit down at my computer and the words pour out, I'm a little jealous, I admit, but that's not my process. So uh, those 2 things, though, I think are common. That you need to have an ear for a good story. Whether it's sometimes you could be at a cocktail party, and somebody will say something. It could be a stranger that says it, and it makes your mind start, spinning. Mine does anyway. But it could be that you read something in a book, or that you listen to something on a newscast on television, and it gets you off and running. Now, every one of these things has a downside. So the downside of ear, especially with somebody like me, who has what my partner fondly calls my gerbil brain, I tend to think a lot of things are a good story. So I have to learn, both when I'm thinking and also when I'm writing, to, as Dorothy Parker said, kill my little darlings. Because sometimes I could get in my head, oh, this would make a really good story. And I may even start writing it. And I might spend a day, I might spend an hour, I might spend a week. And then I suddenly realize this is going nowhere, and you have to let it go. And uh, and that's just that's a downside. Now, maybe not all people have a gerbil brain. I know they don't. I know some others in my family that do. Um, but voice is a little trickier. And voice is trickier because, again, this is my opinion as a writer, and there are 180,000 other writers on Medium, and they may feel differently. But to me, voice must be authentic. It's got to be real. It doesn't matter whether it's sad or it's happy, whether it's angry or funny. It still has to be real. Even fiction, which is technically made up, we all know it's not. Even fiction has to feel real. It could be science fiction that feels real. There's something about the emotional resonance of that story and the way you tell it, that you don't embroider and that you see what's there. And here's the downside of voice. We are all, I mean, it used to be in publishing that they'd say, oh, the unbiased journalist. There's no such thing as unbiased. We're all biased. I mean, we're living in an extremely biased and polarizing time. But every writer who sits down has a point of view. And the only responsibility of the writer then is to admit that you have the point of view. And in my opinion, the other part of that responsibility is also to be able to listen and to be able to take in someone else's point of view and say, I might just agree with this little thing, but you know, I get what you're saying, and we agree to disagree, or we agree to be poles apart, but at least we've heard each other. Now, the other element that I thought of, so I said voice, ear and voice. The third element is connection. And when I think of all the best things that have happened to me, and certainly all the writing projects that have happened to me, they are the result of connection. And right now, Ron, I don't know if everybody else can see the man who's on the screen right now. We didn't plan this, but Ron, can you talk? Can you hear me?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can.
Okay.
No, we didn't plan this.
We didn't plan this, but since Ron is here, Ron and I met when I did a piece for New York Magazine on family therapy. And I have to say, I didn't say this up front, I am not only a journalist, I am also a mother, and then I was only a mother, but I'm now a mother and a grandmother. But when my kids were growing up, both my kids and my ex-husband, who may he rest in peace, passed away this last August, but we did co-parenting. My kids used to say to me, Mom, could you write about something else? So this particular time, this may have been the polarizing article in that particular scenario, because this was about our going into family therapy as a family. And it was, of course, I don't remember whether it was a cover story in New York Magazine, but it was in New York Magazine. And I still get teased by my children about how I loosely disguised our family as two children instead of a boy and a girl. And I changed their names, but anyone who knew me probably recognized it. In any case, Ron contacted me after that article because Ron is a family therapist and the director of a very renowned family therapy center in New York. Hello, Ron.
Hi. Hello. My goodness. So
that was what, 1990?
1990.
About that.
Yeah, 1989.
Right. So now it's interesting. Voice is very interesting. I'm glad Ron showed up, because part of my job as a journalist has been to capture other people's voices. Now with Ron, it was a piece of cake because we thought so much alike. We had such similar opinions. And even on paper, Ron is a really excellent writer. In fact, I think when I first read him, I said, why do you need me? Because he's really an excellent writer and he's done a lot of writing on his own. But we have very similar voices on paper. So
that's right. Well, I'm here to hear what you want to say to people.
Okay. Well, what I was getting at, and there's a perfect example, is connection. So Ron reached out to me, and when I think back, and especially the bestseller, if I think back to how that happened, but it's not just especially the bestseller, all of them. Every project I've had, every opportunity has come my way because of connection to people. And because I talk to strangers. I do it even more since I wrote the book, Consequential Strangers, which is about all the connections outside of family and friends. And that book resonated me so, just the term, which was coined by my co-author, Karen Fingerman. It was such a great oxymoronic term. How could somebody be consequential and be a stranger? And that's just the point. Our lives, we travel in kind of caravans, and we pick up people along the way, and we don't know some of them very, very well, but they matter. They open doors for us. And the reason I include connection as a key in my writing is that I know for me, every time opportunity has knocked, it's because some stranger or acquaintance or close friend pointed out my door. They said, "You should go see Melinda." So let me tell you about how the bestseller happened, because that is in the title of this book, and several of the people who suggested uh, I mention it in the title said people want to know, and it is a story of people. It's also a story of luck, and there's always in life a lot of luck of being at the right time in the right place. So I was at a cocktail party, and a woman came up to me who, she had asked about me. She knew I was a writer. She knew I had an agent. She was an agent, and she said to me, a book came across my desk that would be absolutely perfect for you. At the time, I was writing a column for Child Magazine about parenting. And I said, "Oh, what kind of book?" And she said, "Well, there's this woman in LA, and she's got all these celebrity clients, and they've dubbed her the Baby Whisperer." Now, this was about 4 or 5 years after Robert Redford and the Horse Whisperer, the book and the movie, and it was a huge thing. So when I heard Baby Whisperer, I thought, oh, it's probably just more Hollywood hype. Well, long story short, my agent got in touch with her agent. They sent me out to California, and I met the Baby Whisperer at the airport. And I wish I could do accents, but I won't even try. She was an English woman from Yorkshire. So she had a very, very strong Yorkshire burr, very much like if you watch Frasier, the English woman on Frasier. She sounded just like her. And she picked me up and she said, "I've got to go see a client." And so she drove me to this house in the valley. This was in California. And this woman opened the door with a screaming baby in her arms and tears screaming down her face. And she was full of spit up. She was wearing an old T-shirt, and she looked like she hadn't slept in 3 weeks, which happened to be the age of her baby. She just handed the baby to Tracy. And I'm telling you, it was like I was in a movie. Suddenly, Tracy took the baby, and the baby stopped crying. And it was amazing. So this woman was the real deal. I was able to capture her voice on paper, and also to figure out what she was doing each time she did that. And I did a great job, but it was also, again, it was people that came together. First of all, the publisher came through, and Ron, who's published as many books as I have, knows that publishers don't always come through. This was the perfect storm. We got a 20 minutes on 2020 that was actually more like an infomercial than it was a news segment. It was all of Tracy's adoring clients. One woman was standing in the breakfast nook saying, "Look, you see, I have no furniture. I bought Tracy instead, and it was worth every penny." So, I mean, it was like an infomercial. Anyway, that's the Baby Whisperer. It was all those elements kind of came together, because people will often call me young writers, old writers, doesn't mean new writers, I should say. And they always say, "Well, what's the secret?" There isn't a secret. Writing is very, very difficult. It never gets easy, at least for me. Again, I'm only talking for myself as a writer, but you do get better at it. And it is like, it's like a sport, or like anything that requires practice, training. You get better as you do more of it. It's a very frustrating profession sometimes. And for me, going from 1965 to 2023 has been quite a journey. I don't know why I have no questions, which makes me think that nobody's able to ask questions. So If anybody who has my phone number can tell me what I'm doing wrong, I wish you had questions. Let's see. I'm just going to let everybody come online and see if that works. If you want to ask me a question by raising your hand, I don't know. Look at the chat. Somebody's saying there are questions. Okay. Review questions. Thank you. All right. That's great. Okay. Mostly people are saying, yes, I can hear you. Thank you, guys, everybody, for coming. Now somebody should ask a question because I know where to look. Adult fiction. That's a question. Every time I talk. Okay, first, Tom Calarco is asking, adult or fiction? Is that me? I guess 15 minutes. Do I write adult fiction? Or maybe I said that. I've written 12, altogether 17 adult titles. No, I didn't mean it that way. Every time I've talked to a stranger, I've come away with something to write about. It's amazing. Yes, Daniel, that's absolutely true. And after I wrote Consequential Strangers, I talk to everybody now, and it's always rewarding. Okay, people are saying to me, I see. Okay, I have to. Okay, hold on. I have to. God, this is approve. Okay, approve. I think I have to approve all of you. Approve. Okay. See, I needed an assistant here. And now I'm just letting everybody come on with me if they want. Okay, somebody's writing to me. Okay, so I'm continuing talking as I'm doing this, and I'm trying to approve everybody.
Hello.
Hi, who's there?
I'm Donna. Thanks, Melinda.
Hi, Donna. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Good.
So I have been avoiding submitting my writing to publications because in the past, when I had an editor, I absolutely hated it. And so the fear of dealing with editors has kept me from submitting. How do you get past that fear of dealing with editors?
Okay. Well, I'll say one thing first. Editors, I couldn't live without editors. In fact, when I first came to Medium and I had no connection to an editor, it was terrible. I just wanted even somebody to say, this is good or this doesn't make any sense. Editors are wonderful things. I learned how to write by being an editor. So editors really understand language and how to use it, and they understand all the things I was talking about: voice, pacing, everything. The thing is to find a good editor, and maybe instead of jumping right into a platform like Medium, there are a lot of good writing teachers. I don't know how much, they vary in price. And some are good and some are not so good. Key to knowing whether somebody is a good, I would try it with somebody for free first, because it's right. As I say, writing is not easy, and it's a lot of trial and error, but a good editor can help you keep the good stuff and help you get rid of the bad stuff. And not just that. I've encountered some very bad professional editors. The worst thing that can happen to a journalist is you hand in a piece and they go, it's not quite what I was looking for. And that's what does that mean? And so if you have an editor saying things like that, vague things, run from the publication, run from whatever situation. there are many, many writers out there that are willing to spend time. Some charge a lot of money for it, some charge very little. And some of the magazines, the publications on Medium, you can inquire whether they're willing to work with, I'm going to say, young writers, unseasoned writers. So, but the most important thing is to have a good story to tell. And that will get people interested in you. Because, look, for all the changes that have happened in publishing, the story is still preeminent. People still want to read good stories. They still care. They want to be entertained. They want to be inspired. They want to laugh. They even want to cry, and they want to know that other people out there are crying with them. So it's a very, very powerful medium. I mean, I remember a dear aunt of mine once said to me, I'd chosen the most difficult profession. And I would always come back with, well, we're not going to compare me to a coal miner, but it is a difficult profession. It's difficult to make money, and it's difficult to do. So both of those things. But I applaud you for trying, and I hope that you keep at it.
Thank you.
So, questions. I've got in more questions. I'm trying to approve them. Okay. Hold on. Review questions. My questions. Nope, no more questions yet. Okay. I have comments. Next time I do this, assuming I'm invited back, I am going to wait. A friend of mine is telling me there's questions from the audience. Okay, maybe if the persons who can send me, okay, I'm curious from your perspective as a writer who has seen how writers get their work to readers. Do you think that the work you're able to do now in writing short pieces in Medium helps you hone ideas for longer projects? How could someone make the most of the opportunity to write many short pieces while aspiring to write something longer? A great question, and I happen to know the questioner, so thank you very much. That is a great question. I actually have used Medium to hone an idea for a book that I'm now pitching about a group of much older women I call my old ladies. These are women who are in their 90s and hundreds. And when I first started collecting them, I was only 46. And now I'm an old lady myself. I will divulge that immediately. I'm pushing 80. So I'm now writing a book about how these women have informed my own aging. But I've been able to clarify a lot of my thoughts by writing smaller pieces on Medium. And I think in some ways writing shorter is harder, but the discipline of keeping it to the good medium pieces between probably 700 and 1200 words is what I'm guessing. And most readers prefer 700. But by writing those pieces, you really have to hone in on what are you really trying to say. So I think Medium has really helped my writing in a lot of ways. The parts that I haven't liked is not Medium's fault. It's the world. It's where publishing has brought us. And I think that, Medium is doing a lot, especially by having events like this, by saying that they are really privileging the good writing as opposed to the writers that know how to write just catchy headlines, or as they call it, clickbait. I was brought up in the era before clickbait, so I'm terrible at titles. Besides, all my titles were usually written by the magazine editors who commissioned them or bought the piece from me. So I just read that question. I'm going to try some other ones because I always say I love much more than somebody said they were going to say something something funny, which is fine with me, just as long as it's fun, really funny. And thank you, Lee. Lee and I were earlier on. I want to say one thing. After all these years, it feels very good to be pitching a book at this age. And it also feels really great to be able to learn new skills. And because of my associations on Medium, I'm now doing podcasting. If any of you who are over 50 and are interested in really great pieces on aging, and the subtitle of Crow's Feet is Life as We Age. And the truth is, we age from the minute we're born. We just give it a different, more negative connotation as we get past 50. But aging is a good thing. Aging means you're lucky because you're still alive. And Crow's Feet is a wonderful venue. And it's because of my association with people on Crow's Feet that I'm doing podcasts. And trust me, it's really different skills. And I've really enjoyed learning it. It's a great challenge. And that's what's wonderful about writing and communication. Is I could look at what's happened to the world, as sometimes I do, with such a negative lens and say, oh, the good old days of publishing. Well, the good old days of publishing are long gone. And the days of going out on book tours and having a whole room full of people to talk to, it's still happening, but it's not happening in the same way. And time marches on in every industry. I'm sure wheelwrights felt the same way when cars came into being. So let's see. More questions are in the chat. Review questions. I'm working on it. I don't know what a beta reader is. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find my questions. No, that's my questions. Unanswered questions. Here we go. When I've been under editors. Oh, wait, I spoke to John Murray. Okay. People are trying to help me, and thank you. Hold on. I'm scrolling down. Where? Somebody asked where I got my lovely earrings. That's from a store in Jacksonville, Oregon, when I went to visit my son, who lives out in that way. Oh, my goodness. Questions. More questions. Okay. Somebody asked for my favorite dead writer. I don't know. That's a tough one. May Sarton. The only reason she came to mind was because I recently looked her up because she started her first memoir at 80. But that's not a genuine answer. That's not a okay. Good question. Laura Jevich asked, do you think you have to be an extrovert in order to write human stories? Absolutely not. The quiet observer in the corner probably learns more than the extrovert who doesn't shut up and commands the floor. I know that a few years ago, and I didn't read the book, I will confess, but a wonderful book was written, I think it was called Quiet. Ron, nod your head if you think I'm right. Do you know the title I'm talking about? Quiet, I think it's called. And it was an argument for the fact that introverts have a lot to contribute, and certainly as writers. In fact, probably if anybody, and probably AI could do this in 10 seconds, took a poll of writers, probably more would be on the introverted side. I happened to watch something today with a cartoonist who said she was a very shy kid, and that's how she started writing and doing cartoons, which totally makes sense. I mean, writing to me helps me make sense of the world. And I think that's probably true for a lot of writers. Um, sorry, I didn't come up with my favorite dead writer. Okay, Jill, who seems to be getting through, tell me what other questions. Ah, I see my daughter saying hi, so that means she's listening. And my friend Gail is saying hi. We see the top of her head like Killjoy. No, Kilroy it was. Um, is it okay? I think that my cousin is here. My cousin who also knows Ron Apple, but I don't see them. Okay. So I'm trying to review questions. Ah, I got one. What do you think is the future of publishing since the good old days are gone? As my daughter, who is a hospice nurse, says, I left my crystal ball in the workshop, in the shop. Um, I have no idea. If you had asked me 10 years ago, or asked me to imagine doing this 10 years ago, I would not have. So I have no idea. I think people will always be reading and always writing. Um, when I wrote, when I first started writing, if anybody suggested we would be typing on little screens and walking around with phones that did everything for us, I'm not a visionary. Let's leave it at that. So, do we have any other questions? Let's hear. Ah, someone says they think everyone here is over 50. Maybe that's because of who is ending up on the screen. So I'm trying to get more people on the screen if they want to be. I'm not sure. When I click on the person on the moderation thing, I'm not sure what that does. So if more people come on the screen, the more the merrier. I'm not even watching time. So, all right, the last question I have here is, what do you think is the future of publishing? Does anyone on screen have a question for me? Ron? Greg?
I'm just enjoying.
Melinda, how would you suggest people find agents? Because
that's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a really good
so
question.
hard for everybody.
It is an art for everybody. And I will tell you that I parted ways with my agent in 2014, and not happily either. I'm not going to go into the story because she could be online with us, but and I'm sure has her own version of it. But I suspect that the best way is to ask another writer and get personal I mean, that's what I would do. This time, when I decided I wanted to write another book and not just talk about someday I'm going to write this book, I knew I would need an agent. And I think people should know that they need agents. I don't think that's true if you self-publish, but I'm talking about mainstream publishing. The other great resource besides people well, I started saying that when I decided I first was going to ask people. I never got around to it because I realized that an editor I once had loved and worked with for many years was now an agent. And I would say, if you've ever been published before and you don't have an agent, contact your old editors because some of them are now agents. I know several of them who are of my group. And then the last resource is I was about to say a book, but now it's a website called Writers Marketplace. And they have lists of agents. And the trick is to it's much harder to get face-to-face time with people. I'm learning this from trying to sell a book now. My agent said, we're lucky if we get them to do a Zoom. And in the old days, when you pitched a book, you went around to publishers and they wanted to meet the person behind the book. Now they're more interested in knowing how many followers you have and what's your social media presence, and is it a built-in bestseller? But with agents, I'm not sure whether that's true. So I didn't do that because I took the road of least resistance by contacting someone I already knew and trusted. Now, if you don't have any contacts who are writers or who are in the business of publishing, then I do think that Writers Marketplace is a good place to start because it's been there for a while. I'm sure there are 10 other sites online that do that, but I don't know. I'm skeptical myself, and I think whatever you do, really research that person and ask to speak, not just get letters from. Ask to speak to somebody who's worked with him or her.
Thank you.
So, other than flubbing on I have review questions. I'm looking for unanswered questions. Wait, here we go. I think I've gotten the questions. I was going to say, thank you for coming, Ron. You left. How do I feel about beta readers? I don't know what a beta reader is. Can someone tell me? I don't know whether anybody can tell me what a beta reader is. I'm happy to call them up on stage. I know there's a way of doing that, but well, I do thank. I don't know who came. I see a bunch of people whose names are here, and I really appreciate because I don't know all your names. So that means that you're not all shills for me, and who are doing me a favor. So I really appreciate that you came, and I wish I could have handled the tech stuff better, but I hope I made sense and that you enjoyed listening. And I'm approving as I speak, but I don't know that I did this well enough. Anyone want to say anything?
Hi, Melinda.
I will tell everybody, Gail is my roommate in college. And a sorority sister. And if you've read my stuff on Medium, you know that my sorority sisters make frequent appearances. And that goes back to my my mentioning of consequential strangers. When I was doing the book, and I was trying to define what a consequential stranger was. There's my cousin. Wait a minute. I just approved her. She said, now, my cousin is saying, tell them about your new book. I did a little bit. It's in process, and it's about my old ladies, these wonderful women that I've met over the years since I'm 35, since I'm 46. I'm getting distracted because another one of my sorority sisters is on the screen. It's going to be their stories and how their stories meld with my own aging and my story and what they've really done to help me prepare. I will not say to keep me young because we don't stay young. It's just a fact. And if we're lucky, we do age. I remember I wrote a piece for Medium about a woman who said to me that her mother and sister both died young. And she said, I love my wrinkles because I realized my mother and my sister never got to see them. So that's the kind of stuff that's going to be in my new book.
What's the name of the new book?
I don't want to say it yet because we don't have a publisher. But the subtitle will have My Old Ladies in it, which is the title everybody told me, the 3 words everybody told me not to use. And one of my dear friends called me up one night and said, please don't use that. No one's going to buy the book. Nobody cares about old ladies. And so I'm out to change that. But I'm not putting it in the main title of the book because I know she has a point. So, folks, I went over. I think the official session is over, and I have to leave. And I thank you all for coming.
Hi, Melinda.
Next year.
Hi, Nancy.
Goonikins. I'm so amazed to have gotten in.
Wait, I think everybody else is still online.
Oh, they can come to our sorority meeting.
No,
I
I'm gonna
think-
end this before it gets ugly.
All right.
Bye.
Cooney.
Oh, we have to press leave.
Okay. All right. See ya.